There's a moment that happens to so many of us, and I want to start there. Because it's the moment everything becomes clear. You're sitting alone. Maybe it's evening. Maybe it's 3 in the morning. And you realize you can't remember the last time you felt fulfilled. Not the last time you felt happy. Not the last time you laughed or had a good day. I mean the last time you felt fed. The last time someone's presence in your life actually nourished something instead of leaving you starving. I spent years not recognizing that I was in a state of emotional starvation. And the worst part? I thought I was doing it for love. I thought I was patient. I thought I was understanding. I thought my ability to survive on the smallest crumbs of attention was proof of how deeply I could love someone, how devoted I was, how worthy I must be of eventually getting more. But here's what I didn't understand until the silence finally became too loud to ignore. I wasn't loving someone. I was surviving on them. There's a difference, and it's the difference between a life and an existence. So if you've ever found yourself grateful for a text message, if you've ever felt your entire day shift because someone finally looked at you a certain way, if you've ever caught yourself defending someone's emotional absence as though it were a strength instead of a wound, this is for you. Because what I'm about to tell you is something I wish someone had told me when I was still young enough to protect myself. 1. How crumbs become a meal. Let me tell you how you learn to survive on crumbs. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens so gradually that you don't even notice the moment your hunger becomes normal. It starts small. Someone sends you a message after days of silence. Just a few words. Nothing particularly warm. Nothing that requires any real effort. But you read it 17 times. You analyze the punctuation. You tell yourself this means something. This means they were thinking about you. This means they care. And your nervous system lights up like they just handed you gold. That's the beginning. That's the moment you agree without ever saying yes to survive on less. Because here's what happens in your brain. When someone is inconsistent with their affection, your body goes into a state of heightened anticipation. You're never quite sure what you're going to get. Maybe today they'll be warm. Maybe today they'll be distant. Maybe today they'll actually show up the way you need them to. Or maybe they won't. That uncertainty creates a kind of desperation in you, a quiet, constant searching. So when they do give you something, anything, you receive it with an intensity that seems disproportionate to what was actually offered. A text message becomes a love letter. A lunch invitation becomes a declaration of commitment. A moment of vulnerability becomes proof that they're finally starting to let you in. You're not crazy for interpreting it this way. Your nervous system is literally in survival mode. It's scanning for any sign of safety, any indication that you might finally be okay. And when it finds one, even a small one, it celebrates. But celebration keeps you trapped, because you start expecting less. You start being grateful for basic kindness. You start praising them for showing up occasionally, as though showing up occasionally were a remarkable achievement instead of the bare minimum. You rearrange your expectations downward so frequently that one day you wake up and realize you're not asking for much anymore. You're asking for almost nothing. And somehow they're still not giving it. That's when you know you've crossed into something dangerous. That's when the crumbs have become so normalized that you can't even see them anymore. They're just your life. They're just how love works. They're just how it is. 2. The architecture of hope. I want to talk about hope for a second, because hope is what keeps us in this. Hope is not the enemy. Hope is what allows us to believe in better futures. Hope is what gets us through hard times. Hope is beautiful and necessary and human. But there's a specific kind of hope that becomes dangerous. It's the hope that's built on nothing but maybe. Maybe he's just going through something. Maybe he doesn't know how to express his feelings. Maybe he cares more than he shows. Maybe one day he'll realize what he's been missing. Maybe I just need to be patient a little longer. That word, maybe, is insidious. It doesn't require evidence. It doesn't require proof. It only requires the absence of proof that you're wrong. And as long as he hasn't explicitly said, "I don't care about you," you can keep building your maybe on top of your maybe on top of your maybe until you're standing on a tower of assumptions so high you can't see the ground anymore. The thing about maybe is that it's infinitely renewable. You can never run out of it. He ghosted for 2 weeks? Maybe he was busy. He canceled plans without explanation? Maybe something came up. He introduced you to people as a friend? Maybe he's just private. He didn't text on your birthday? Maybe he forgot, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care. With every excuse, with every rationalization, with every time you choose to interpret his behavior in the most generous possible light, you're signing a new contract. A contract that says, "I will continue to accept less than I need because I believe in the possibility of more." And the architecture of that hope becomes so intricate that dismantling it feels like destroying something sacred. Because if your hope isn't real, then what have you been doing all this time? What does all that patience mean? What does all that love mean? If he doesn't deserve it, then you've been wasting something precious on someone who didn't even want it. That's terrifying to face. So instead, we keep reinforcing the hope. We keep adding another brick to the tower. We keep finding new reasons to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time is different. This time he'll come through. This time he'll finally see us the way we see him. But he won't. Not because he's incapable, but because he's shown you exactly who he is through his actions, and you've chosen not to believe it. 3. What happens when you mistake scraps for love? I want to tell you something that took me years to understand. When you're surviving on crumbs, you stop recognizing abundance. And more than that, you start to fear it. There was a moment in my life when someone showed up consistently, someone who texted back quickly, someone who made plans and kept them, someone who didn't play games or keep me guessing, someone who actually genuinely seemed happy to see me. And I remember feeling confused by it. I didn't trust it, because it didn't match the pattern I'd been living. There was no mystery, no uncertainty, no desperate searching for meaning in the spaces between their words. It felt too easy. It felt boring. It felt like something was wrong. That's how damaged I'd become. Consistency felt threatening. Because somewhere in me, I'd learned to associate love with struggle. I'd learned to interpret emotional unavailability as depth. I'd confused someone's coldness with complexity. I'd mistaken their distance for intelligence, as though caring about me would somehow make them less than what they were. And when I was offered genuine warmth, I couldn't recognize it. It didn't feel like home because home had been so cold for so long. This is what happens when you survive on crumbs for long enough. You forget what actual nourishment feels like. You also start to do something else. You start to perform gratitude for the smallest gestures. You shower someone with appreciation for basic human decency. You express such profound relief at being acknowledged that you make them the hero of your own story. And they like that. Why wouldn't they? They get to be distant and mysterious and emotionally unavailable, and still have someone who worships them for it. They get all the benefits of your attention and care without having to reciprocate any of it. They get to have you waiting in the wings while they do whatever they want. It's not a relationship. It's a setup. But it doesn't feel like a setup when you're inside it. It feels like evidence of your capacity for love. It feels like you're proving something about yourself through your loyalty. It feels like eventually, if you love enough, if you understand enough, if you remain patient enough, they'll finally see your value. Except they already see your value. They're just not interested in honoring it. The people who only give us crumbs don't do it because they're blind to our worth. They do it because they're counting on us not seeing it ourselves. 4. The language of silence. And then one day, something shifts. It might not be dramatic. It might not be the day they choose someone else, or the day they say something particularly cruel. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a series of small moments that finally add up to a truth you can't rationalize anymore. For me, it was a birthday. Not even an important birthday, just another year. But I had been with this person for 6 years, and I realized that for 6 years, I had remembered every important date in their life. Every milestone, every moment that mattered. And for 6 years, they had forgotten mine. Not every time, just most of the time. But the most is what matters, isn't it? The most is what shows you how you actually live in someone's mind. And I was barely in there at all. I remember sitting with that realization, and it was like the silence suddenly had a language. Every time he didn't reach out was a word. Every time he didn't show up was a sentence. Every time he chose something else over me was a paragraph in a very long story. The story was, "You don't matter to me the way you think you do." But I had spent a long time not hearing that story. I had spent years translating his silence into something kinder. I had spent years filling in the blanks with hope, with excuses, with theories about why he was the way he was. I had become fluent in the language of my own abandonment, but I'd never actually learned the translation. Here's what I realized, though. Silence isn't actually ambiguous. We make it ambiguous. We make it ambiguous because we're terrified of what it actually means. If we accept what the silence is really saying, then we have to do something about it. We have to admit that we've been wrong. We have to admit that we've been wasting time on someone who isn't wasting any energy on us. We have to admit that our love isn't enough, because the problem was never that they didn't understand how much we cared. The problem was that they didn't care back. And once you hear that, once you really, truly hear it, you can't unhear it anymore. The silence becomes deafening. 5. What starving taught me about hunger. I think the hardest part of leaving someone you've been surviving on is realizing what you're going to miss. You're going to miss the anticipation. You're going to miss the hope. You're going to miss the feeling that maybe, just maybe, everything could be different tomorrow. You're going to miss the version of yourself that believed in the fantasy. Because as painful as it was, at least it was familiar. At least it made sense. At least you knew how to survive it. What you're not going to miss, though, and this is what I want you to know, is the hunger. The constant gnawing hunger. The hunger that wakes you up in the morning wondering if today is the day. The hunger that makes you rewrite your own worth based on someone else's inconsistency. The hunger that convinces you that your inability to give up on someone is actually your greatest strength. It's not. It's your greatest vulnerability. Because I want to tell you something that took me a very long time to understand. The fact that you can survive on crumbs doesn't mean you should. The fact that you can remain patient through abandonment doesn't mean it's beautiful. The fact that you can rationalize someone's coldness doesn't mean you're wise. It means you've learned to live smaller than you were ever meant to. And here's the thing nobody tells you about leaving someone like this. Healing isn't about falling out of love. Healing is about falling in love with yourself in a way that finally matters more than hoping they'll fall in love with you. It's about recognizing your own hunger, not as a weakness, but as information. Your hunger is telling you something. It's telling you that you need more. It's telling you that you deserve more. It's telling you that there are people in this world who will feed you, not starve you. There are people who will see you and actually choose you. There are people who won't make you beg for basic human kindness. When you stop surviving on crumbs, your palate changes. You start to taste what real nourishment is. You start to realize how much energy you were spending just trying not to starve. And you realize that energy could have been spent on becoming, on creating, on living, not waiting, living. 6. After the silence. After I left, the silence didn't end. It just changed meaning. The absence of his voice was no longer something to interpret and hope through. It was just absence. It was just what happens when you stop calling someone who never calls back. And that was sad. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. I grieved. I grieved the person I thought he was. I grieved the future I thought we had. I grieved the version of myself that had been willing to live so small. But I also grieved something else. I grieved the hunger. Because that hunger had become part of my identity. It had become the narrative I told myself about who I was. Someone who could love so deeply, so purely, so selflessly that I could survive on nothing but crumbs and a dream. Except that's not love. That's not pure. That's not selfless. That's self-abandonment dressed up in prettier words. When the hunger finally went away, when I finally stopped scanning every interaction for signs of caring, when I finally stopped replaying conversations in my head looking for the moment where things could have been different, that's when I realized something. I didn't just miss the hope. I missed the familiarity of being empty. Because being empty meant I had a project. Being empty meant I had something to work toward. Being empty meant I had an excuse for why my life hadn't become what I wanted it to be. It wasn't my fault. It was his fault for not seeing me. It was his fault for not choosing me. It was his fault that I was starving. But it wasn't. I had chosen it. Every single day, I had chosen to accept crumbs instead of walking away to find a real meal. That realization was harder than the breakup. 7. What fullness looks like. I want to tell you what happened after I finally understood. The silence got quieter. Not because he started reaching out, he didn't, but because I stopped listening so hard for his voice. I started listening to my own. And my own voice had been trying to tell me something for a very long time. It had been saying, "You are not meant to survive on this. You are not meant to be grateful for breadcrumbs. You are not meant to apologize for your hunger. Your hunger is not a flaw, it's a signal. It's telling you that you need more, and you deserve more. Not someday, now." So if you're still sitting in the silence right now, if you're still trying to interpret the absence, if you're still hoping that maybe, just maybe, it means something different than what it actually means, I want you to know that you don't have to wait for them to change. You don't have to wait for them to finally see you. You don't have to wait for the silence to become music. You can choose yourself first. And that's not selfish, that's survival. That's finally feeding yourself instead of asking someone else to do it while you starve. The crumbs will always be there if you want them. But once you taste real food, you'll never go back. Start there. If any part of this felt like I was talking directly to you, that's not an accident. This channel exists for exactly that, to help you see it clearly, so you can stop waiting and start choosing yourself. If you want to keep doing this work with me, subscribe. There's more of this waiting for you. And if this one found you at the right moment, hit like so it finds someone else who needs it too. I'll see you in the next one.